This is the Simply Safety version 6 People Module movie for all users. By the end of this movie you should be able to add, edit, and delete people, recognize mandatory fields, recognize important data fields, add privacy information, set people inactive or active, add and search for special qualifications, add training down records, print a training report, filter to a specific person or group of people, print a personnel record, link documents to a people record, and recognize the features available in the people module. Wow, that's quite a few things to cover. We're going to look at the entire people module here, but we're going to focus on the important thing: mandatory fields, how to change employee IDs, optional filters, job title, people type, toolbox group, and job history versus employment history. To access the people module from the main menu screen, I just click on the first menu choice, the people node, and it opens up to the browse screen. Now let's just quickly review how to add, edit, and delete people. To add a new person, roll your mouse to the lower right corner of the screen and click on the Add button. The Add New Person form will open. To edit an existing person, highlight the silver tab on the left end of the row and click the Edit button at the bottom right of the screen, and the edit form will open. Alternately, and what is more easier, just double click on the person's record and the person's record will open. Now to delete employees, remember the silver tab at the left end of the row. So if I click on that silver tab for Sloan T to highlight it, then I press the delete key on my keyboard to delete this person, and a message comes up and says that we can't delete Sloan T because there's related records. So in order to actually delete Sloan T, you'd first need to remove all related training records, injury records, and damage records. What's more normal in a database like Simply Safety is that you don't delete people, you simply inactivate them and they disappear. Your license numbers are based only on active people. You can have as many inactive people as you want, and later in this movie I'll show you how to inactivate a person. I'm just going to double click now on the record for Bob, my test employee, and open up his personal record, and we'll go through the people module and the tabs in it. Now there's a lot of tabs and a lot of features in here, but not all of these things are very important. Some of them are important, some of them are not. So I'm going to double click now on my test employee Bob to open up his personal record, and we'll go through the people module tab by tab, looking at what's really important and what are the most important things that you would probably use. Okay, let's start on the main tab, which is the default tab, and work from the left to the right. First we see a picture for Bob, and there's a button below the picture which says Change Photo. So if I want to change the photo, I just click on that and select another photo. It's literally as simple as that. Now I suspect that the photo I picked here is pretty big because it's taking quite a bit of time to close. And that's the first thing you want to know about photos. Photos can be very big and they can help to fill up your hard drive. So if possible, use a photo like a JPEG or a GIF image or a smaller PNG that doesn't burn up so much hard disk space. I happen to know that this is a very large photo. It's probably 2 or 3 megabytes, and it could be just a few hundred kilobytes. So I'm going to change that photo back to my original one here, which is okay, and we're back to our original photo. Below the photo are a date field for the photo issue and photo expiry. You may or may not use these. They're really not that important. Remember that the canary yellow fields in Simply Safety are expiry fields, so if you fill this yellow field in, then Simply Safety Alert can send reports on when photos are expiring for people. Just below that, these are important fields. There's a field called Hired and a field called Inactive. Now the field Hired is just a read-only field as well as inactive, and those two dates, there's only one shown here, they come off the Privacy tab. So we'll have a look at changing those when we get into the Privacy tab. But on this screen they're simply read-only fields. Okay, let's move to the right. We've got for Bob a first name, a middle name, and a last name. Now first name, last name are mandatory because they're in bolded letters, so you must put something in for those fields. Middle name is optional. Then we have the employee number. This really should be called employee ID because it's not necessarily a number. This one here is BBOB, so it's literally not a number. Usually you would not change an employee's ID or employee's number. That's something that is usually set by your company, but if you need to change it, there's a change button here. Just below the employee number field is the company field. This is a drop-down box, and your safety manager will set up these companies in the company module. This may be your company, which is likely the primary company, could be a subsidiary company, or it could be a contractor company. So every employee in Simply Safety has to belong to some company. Also, the employee has to have a home region and site. Keep in mind that sites are connected to regions. So first you pick the region, and then that box would populate with the sites that are related to that region. Towards the bottom of this column, we have phone, fax, mobile phone number, and email number. These are intended to be the company phone, fax, mobile, and email address. And you can put the personal information on the privacy tab if you want to track that information for phone and email. Okay, over on the right column, there's some important fields over here. The first is job title, and the second is people type. Now, these are optional fields. You don't have to fill them in, but they're certainly recommended, especially job title, because you can assign training and track training by job title, and you can also assign training by people type. The next field down, and I changed this label name, by the way, in the setup module. This is one of the customizable label names. I changed this to toolbox group. Now this is a little bit more work because you have to assign everybody to a particular kind of a group, but if you do toolbox or tailgate meetings, this can be very handy for tracking those toolbox tailgate training records. So let's say that I have 10 people that belong to the operations group. Bob is one of them, so I assign him to the operations group. Later, when I'm inputting a record of a toolbox or a tailgate meeting, I can quickly add the training history for that to everyone that is in the operations group. So by assigning people a toolbox group, that allows you to speed up your training input. To the right of the print button is the document links button. So if I click on that, we have 4 different documents linked here for Bob. And if we wanted to add another document, it could be any kind of a document that will run on your network. It could be a picture, it could be a performance review, it could be any kind of a file. We just select it and it will get added here. To run that file, you double click on the file. Okay, we've reviewed the main tab. Next, let's move to the privacy tab. Please just notice this little flag on the right corner, upper right corner, that says active. Bob is currently an active employee. So if I click on the privacy tab, I should see the privacy tab. Now keep in mind that the privacy tab can be locked out in security settings, so you may not have access to this tab at all. If you do have access to the tab, some of the fields may be missing if there's privacy settings turned on by your safety manager in the setup module. If so, things like the social insurance number or the SSN number and the date of birth may be missing. There's a place here to track the employee's residence address and some personal information such as gender, height, and weight on the right column. Please notice this area at the bottom of the privacy tab for dates. This is a very important area because it controls whether or not a person is active or inactive in the database. Everyone that's active has to have a hire date. They may not yet have a layoff or terminated date, which means that they would be active. Once a layoff or terminated date goes in, this person becomes inactive. This green flag in the upper right corner turns to inactive to a red inactive tab. Once a new hire date is added, if this person is rehired, if their layoff period is over, they're brought back onto the workforce, then a new hire date is entered and this flag again becomes active and the person shows up in your active list. So our most recent hire date here is 02/02/06. So if I go back to the main tab and look at the hire date, it's going to show 2/2/2006. And there's no current inactive date for that hire period. If we were to fill in or pick from this drop-down box a layoff date or a terminated date, then this person would go inactive and there would be an inactive date shown here on the main tab. So I'm just going to summarize this one more time because it's very important in Simply Safety. When a person is first added to the database, they must have a hire date. They wouldn't have a layoff or a terminated date, so this flag would be green, they'd be active, they'd show up in the active lists in Simply Safety. Once they're laid off or terminated, and you fill in a date by picking from the date box, they will go inactive. This will turn to a red inactive, and they will be hidden from the active browse screens in Simply Safety. Should they be rehired, once again, you just fill in a new hire date and they will show up again as active. I've just clicked on the Other tab. Now the Other tab has basically optional fields. It's a place for general notes and supervisor notes and some details that are really optional. You may or may not fill them in. This is an important area here if this is a first aid person, where you can track their level, their number, and their expiry date. Again, these canary yellow fields feed into the Simply Safety alert tracking system. So if you fill this date in, you'll be able to get the expiry date of all your first aid attendants. Please notice this area to the bottom right, Special Qualifications. This is an optional area, but you may find it very useful. If this person, Bob, belongs to the safety committee, then you check this checkbox, and if this person is in-house training instructor, you check this checkbox. And the relevance of that is when you're in the safety meetings module, this person will show up in the drop-down lists, and the same is true when you're in the add training module. Bob, if this is checked, would then show up as an in-house instructor. You can add your own qualifications for people here, and the value of this is then you can use the filters in the upper left corner of the People browse screen to search and quickly find people by region and by site that may have special qualifications. So I'm going to add another qualification, so I'll just click on the button, Add New Qualification, and there's some preset qualifications here that you can just check on. I'll say that he's a member of the emergency response team. He has a commercial driver's license, but let's say I want to add a completely new one. I don't find it in the list, so I just type it into the box, and I'm going to say he's a search dog handler. Very specialized qualification. Now click on OK, and then those qualifications go into the drop-down list. I'm going to click Save here. I'm going to go to the filters for the People module. Now I want to find a person that's a search dog handler, so I just put that in there. Active person that's a search dog handler. Click OK, and now we find Bob. So if we had 1,000 people in a database, that would be a quick way to find people with special qualifications. I've just clicked on the Contacts tab, and this is a place for storing emergency contact information for Bob. If he should get injured, you may quickly need to look up a person to contact, and a room on the right for notes. The Add Vacation tab means absenteeism vacation, and this again is an optional tab. If you want, you can click Add, and you can track Bob's absenteeism or vacation information. This information can be very useful if an employee ultimately has to be let go. Now you can pick a reason from the drop down at the bottom. Again, if you have sufficient security permissions, if you double click, you can add a new reason. If this is an unplanned absence, then click the Unplanned Absence checkbox. If you want to link a document, such as a doctor's note, click on the Documents Link button. To print a history of absenteeism for this employee, click on the Print button on the bottom left of this form. I'm now clicking on the Damage tab, and any damages that Bob was related to or directly involved in will show up on this form. And the same is true of damages, of injuries, and of training. So if I want, I can double click on this record right now, and the damage record itself will open up so I can look at the detail. So the concept here is most of the important safety information in Simply Safety feeds back into the People module, so when you're in a personnel record, you can look at just about everything that this person was involved in related to safety in your company. The Discipline tab tracks disciplinary notes, and to add one, you just click on the Add button and fill in the form, click the Print button to print it. If you want a follow-up meeting date that feeds into the alerting tracking system so you don't miss it, you'd fill in this canary yellow field here. This again can be very important if an employee has to be let go and you need to produce a due diligence trail of discipline. I've just clicked on the Injuries tab, and like damages, any injuries that Bob was directly related in would feed back into this tab. And again, if I double click on the record, it's going to open up to detail on that injury. The medical tab contains a medical history for Bob. If I double click on the record, details on that medical test history. Again, the canary yellow fields feed into the alerting system. If you don't want to miss his next medical test, fill that field in and set up a report in the expiry tracking system. There's a space at the bottom of this tab for medical notes. PPE and equipment tracks any kind of a personal protective equipment that may have been issued to this employee. Now you can add it directly into these cells on this form by just selecting from the drop down and filling in the dates, or if you prefer, and what's easier if you're adding for a number of people, go to the people PPE issued and just click add and select Bob and add it there. Then it's going to show up back in the, you add it here, that it's going to show up back in Bob's personal history in the PPE tab. Next, let's have a look at the training tab. This is a very important tab because it lists training and toolbox meetings. They're both combined on this form for this employee. Starting in the upper left, I'm going to click on this button, View Course Assignment. This shows us for employee Bob how this person is assigned to courses. So he's assigned by people type to these courses, by his region and site to these courses. He's assigned individually to IT training, and by job title to the course AA and the course WHMIS. Now there is some duplication here. We have WHMIS in both places, but he will not be double enrolled for courses. The form itself shows the course name history for Bob, organized in chronological date order from the earliest to the most recent at the bottom. Now you can double click on any of these records. I'm going to double click on IT training, and that will open up to details on that particular record. And this record can be changed if required. You can print a certificate for Bob immediately from the reports at the bottom of the screen, or if you click on the document linking button, you might want to link his training record right in here in a PDF or other kind of a format. Notice in the right column there's a due date. If the due date is overdue, it's in yellow. There's one record here that there is no due date being shown for, so if that's the behavioral course, if we open that up, we can see that the retrain period is 0 days. So any course with a retain period of 0 doesn't get scheduled again. The student is due for that course until they finished it, and then they're not due any longer. Now if they were to be scheduled, if we were to change this retrain period, then they would come up as due for training again in the future. From the due date column on the right, you can get information when the students are next due for training, and if you click the print button in the lower left corner of this form, it will print out a training report with this information on it and their next training due date. The bottom right of this form, there's a button that says wallet size. I'm going to click on that. This allows you to print out a small wallet sized card with a number of training courses. Now the card is small, so it'll really only accept about 6 courses. Highlight the courses that you want to print onto your wallet size certificate, then click on the print button to print it. Please note that both training courses and toolbox meetings are included on this form. If it's a toolbox meeting, the first 2 words will be toolbox meeting. So if I double click on this, that opens up to the exact toolbox meeting that Bob had attended. Whereas if I click on a training record, that's going to open up into a different form with information on the training course. So while we're in training, we're going to ask the question, how do you add a training course for Bob? So I'm going to save this, go out of here, I'm going to go to training and go to training done. And at the bottom right, I'm going to click on add. Now, this form allows you to add many training courses to one person. So I'm going to pick Maine Calgary, ABC Contracting, and our student Bob. I'm going to add the training date. I'm going to say it's today. Our instructor, remember this in-house instructor, that comes out of a checkbox in the People module. Outside instructors are listed in the Setup module. I'm going to pick Susan Wong as the outside instructor. Score, I'll say 100%. These are not mandatory, but I'll say if you want to track the cost of the courses, I'll say $55. This is OJ3 hours, that's on-the-job training hours. Well, I'll say there was none for this course. Classroom hours, we're going to say there was 8. Assign student to training, I'm not going to do that. The course, I know that this person is already going to be assigned by a job title. And I'm going to pick this course, Ecology Primer, and say that Bob is completed and passed. I don't want to carry data forward because I don't want to add a new record for another person. So if I selected 3 or 4 courses, it would add 3 or 4 courses, or it could add all of the courses. So this is a good form for adding many courses for one person. So I'm going to click Save, add another record, no, and then we'll go back to People, go into Bob, to his Training tab, and there's our Ecology Primer course at the bottom that I just added, so I can open it up right there. Okay, so that is a good way to add many training courses for one person. If you want to add many people to one training course, then the best way to do that is by setting up a class in the training module, but we'll cover that when we do the training module. I've just clicked on the Certifications tab. Training and certifications are related but not the same. Certification is for tracking something like a journeyman status certificate. So listed in this form here are your certifications that I've added for this person. So if I double click on this certificate name, let's just look at this form. It's for Bob. The certificate name is listed here. Now these come out of the training courses, so this must be in your training courses setup. You'd go to training courses to add that. The professional designation, it could be apprentice, journeyman, or you can double click if you have the permissions and add whatever designation you want. This is optional to add a certificate issuer. Again, double click to add if you want to add a customized version, and your dates. Again, if you have a certificate in a scanned-in format, you can click on document linking and link it right there. There's dates here for the issue of the certificate and for the renewal date of the certificate. Again, the yellow fields feed into the alerting system. Keep in mind that Simply Safety does not reschedule for certificates in the training module. So when I click on Save here, it's going to give us a little notice to that effect. This record will not be included in Training Due. The Training Control Center must be used for Training Due records. So if you're wanting to track your certificates, make sure that you use that canary yellow alerting field for tracking the expiry of certificates. The DL tab is used for tracking driver's license information. Again, you have 2 alerting fields in yellow that feed into the alerting system. So you can create reports in Simply Safety Alert that will send managers at various sites information on whose driver's license will be expiring. On the right hand side of this form, you can click Add to add driving violations for this person. The Pay and Deductions tab literally tracks pay and deductions. To use this form, just click the buttons and fill in the subforms. I've just clicked on the Reviews tab, and this form shows 2 kinds of reviews, performance reviews and safety observations. You can add performance reviews on this form, but safety observations are read-only and they're added from the Safety Observations module. To add a performance review, just click on the Add button at the bottom of the screen and fill in the fields. I have 1 safety observation here listed that Bob was involved with. So if I double click on that, that will open the safety observation up and I can look at the details right there. Okay, I'm going to go back and click on the Main tab. That brings us to the end of the People module movie. Keep in mind there's many tabs, many fields. You don't need to use them all. Just use what you need. Keep in mind that these ones in bold are mandatory, that You will probably want to use the job title people type, and if you're doing toolbox tailgate meetings, probably either it'll be called the work group or the toolbox group field. Also remember that the hired and inactive dates come out of the privacy tab, and people are made active or inactive by giving them a hire date or a layoff terminated date. In this movie we've covered these topics: adding, editing, and deleting people, mandatory fields, other important fields, privacy information, setting people active or inactive, adding and searching for special qualifications, adding training done records, printing a training report, filtering to a specific person, printing a personnel record, linking documents to a people record, and other features important in the people module.